Good day and welcome to my presentation. My name is Curtis Smith. I will be discussing a core competency specifically in relation to legal issues today. The core competency itself is the legal framework within which libraries and information agencies operate. That framework includes laws relating to copyright, privacy, freedom of expression, equal rights, and intellectual property. Now, just a bit of a disclaimer here. This is a really complicated topic. There is a lot of technically difficult things to take on board here, specifically in relation to the law. It is continually changing due to new technologies. I mean, we've seen a huge change in the last number of years due to the electronic media coming into play. So you may need to consult various experts. Don't go to Lionel Hutz like we have on the slide here, but you really may need to track down the appropriate resources so that you can educate yourself on the issues that you are facing. And it is up to you to do that. Let's talk first about copyright. And what I'm going to do for the rest of this presentation is really just highlight a number of issues and a number of questions that could come to fruition in your practice as in a library or as in the information science world. So for instance, fair use in the copyright world. Here's some questions that may come up with you. How could a library or its patrons be liable for copyright infringement, for downloading, for photocopying things? What are your defenses that are available? When can you make a copy of electronic media? The legislation that is out there is quite specific, although you can only get so specific because things are changing so rapidly. Say, for instance, you see someone photocopying almost a full book at your photocopier in your library. Are you under any specific legal duty to intervene? These are all kind of fair use questions that you may have to approach. Classroom issues. I mean, librarians are so intertwined often with instruction or with education. You may get asked questions by teachers or instructors at your school or in your local community. So can you tape something off the air and then play it back for a class? What if it's a pay-per-view? These are kind of copyright issues that you may approach. If something says for home use only, like a video, can you show it in a classroom? Can you make a transparency out of a chart or a table that you find in a book and use it in a classroom? Can you make copies of a newsletter as a librarian and have those circulating in and amongst your organization? So you have a newsletter on copyright trends and you subscribe to it and you want to make copies of it so that it can get around quicker. Can you do that? Is that within the idea of fair use, and does that meet copyright regulation? Can you make backups of computer programs you own? What are the specific licensing requirements that are there? And then there's this huge aspects of DMCA and the licensing. What can you do with these types of things? How are they going to affect life as a librarian or in the science world? Are you responsible for people who download copyright material in excess of fair use? So they're downloading complete movies or complete CDs. What measures can you take to protect both yourself and your library from possible claims of infringement? Do you put up warnings? Is posting a warning on the wall of your your library or on your website itself, is that able to do? What can you do to protect yourself here? Can you put password protection on things? It's really critical, and these are very emerging issues, and they're very highly litigated with a lot of money at stake. So it's something that you should become aware of. Confidentiality, I think librarians understand this intimately. What protections are we allowed to afford to our patrons? It isn't like a lawyer-client, a solicitor-client relationship. We don't have that. But there is a sort of an understanding that as a librarian you can keep certain things quote-unquote secret. For instance, a reference interview. Can someone later take a copy of your notes from your reference interview with somebody if they're being investigated? Can parents find out specifically about the circulation records, what their kids are taking out? Can the police do that? Are they allowed to access that type of thing? And if they are, what do they have to do in order to access that? Things like the attendance at libraries and activities in the library. Can you get a copy of an attendance sheet? Can the police get a copy of an attendance sheet? If the police happen to come to a library and say, is John Smith here? Can you, as a librarian, say that John Smith was there? Can you talk to the police or somebody and discuss what other people are reading? Is that a possibility? There's all sorts of ethical issues here where the ALA Code of Ethics or your State Library Association Code of Ethics could come into play, and each of these individual associations and probably individual institutions have policies on this type of thing. So these are all critical legal issues that you have to educate yourself about. Access issues. What do you do when you have patrons with bad conduct, an unruly patron? Is there a policy in place for that? What does the law say that is your rights and your duties in regards to patron conduct? Can you kick someone out of the library? Can you limit the use of a public space within the library? Libraries are often public spaces. They're funded by local communities or states or whatever the case may be. Can you say that no, this particular organization cannot use this public space? For instance, maybe a for-profit organization, you may not allow them to use the public space. Can something with possibly concerning issues be used? Could a local Nazi group, for instance, use a public space or a meeting room? An interesting issue that's emerging is, can you charge fees for services? Often public libraries are, by definition, funded publicly. Can you then charge for services that public library issues? Can you charge for DVDs? Can you charge for access to computers, things like that? Are you breaching people's rights by charging those particular fees? Very concerning issues that are continually under the spotlight. First Amendment and censorship. As a Canadian, I'm a little stuck with the First Amendment kind of ideas, but they are critical. I can tell you that just from looking across the border. Censorship in the selection process is a critical one. Is there certain levels of censorship exerted in just the selection of materials and books for your library? Can patrons have a say in this? We discussed this a little bit in the case studies we did for challenging various books and media. Can a patron put together a group to say that they don't want certain books in the library? Can a patron in their will leave books to the library, and do they have a right to have the library accept those books? Again, emerging things, probably going to become more and more emergent as our population gets older. Offensive materials. Who can determine what materials are offensive? What is the actions taken when a material is found to be offensive? Internet filtering, again, a key issue. Libraries are being seen more and more as public spaces, as places where people can access the internet if they don't have access at their home. So do we install internet filters on these things so that offensive, quote-unquote, sites can't be accessed? Will those filters actually start filtering out legitimate research? What responsibilities do we bear towards kids in a library? Can parents demand that certain filters be used? What about the use of librarians as the filter? So rather than having a technological filter actually on the computer system, what if it's a staff monitored internet filtering? And what are the duties and responsibilities in relation to that kind of staff internet filtering? Again, huge cases consistently being determined in the state and federal courts, and things that we as librarians need to consider. Professional issues, and this is the final kind of issue that I'm going to talk about, is can we commit malpractice as librarians? Could we, for instance, in the publication of something on a library blog or a book review, could we be found to have done something that is legally actionable, like a libel or a slander or something like that? What if, in the case of doing some reference work for a patron, if we give them erroneous information, can we, the librarian or the library itself, be held responsible for that? What if our library possesses incorrect information, but there is correct information out there? Do we bear a responsibility for actually having this incorrect information on our shelves? Can we assess the quality of the materials as librarians and then pass that on? So for instance, if a parent asks us what a good encyclopedia would be for their kids? Could we say, well, this one that we have is good, this one we have is not particularly good? Are we playing a role? Are we kind of working against commercial interests and that type of thing? Or are we supposed to maintain a certain step back from that type of discussion? And then the whole idea of being a professional licensing, being a profession, quote unquote, what duties and responsibilities fall in line with that? Do we have a duty of care? Can we be taken to court for those type of things? Are librarians to be held to the same standard as, say, doctors or lawyers in the conduct of their professional responsibilities? Very critical issues, and there's a lot of professions out there that are struggling with this. I guess one way to conclude here is to say that in order to keep on top of this stuff, you got to do some professional reading, and there are consistently articles out in the journals on this. The ALA and your various state library associations have very good resources on this, and there's a link to ala.org, the advocacy page. Professional development is critical. I'm a lawyer. I have to undertake a certain amount every year, and I think librarians have to too. And probably a piece of that should be on legal issues. Here's a key one. Get to know your library's lawyer, be it your town lawyer, the city lawyer, the school's lawyer, whatever the case may be. I think it's critical that you get to know them so that you can establish a relationship in order to ask these questions as they come up. And finally, take a course. I'm a graduate of L&I SCI 862, the legal issues for librarians and information managers. It was great. It touched on a lot of this stuff, and it drove a lot of these slides, and I think it's well worthwhile to have that particular knowledge in your toolbox. Thank you very much.